With all due respect, that's a bunch of malarkey. This is a bunch of stuff, deal.
What does that mean, a bunch of stuff?
Well, it means it's simply inaccurate.
It's Irish.
Exactly, it is. We Irish call it malarkey.
Thanks for the translation.
No, we Irish call it malarkey.
You know what this is? Yeah, and I reserve this word for those rare instances when it's truly deserved. This is malarkey.
That's a bunch of malarkey.
From the King Spring Studios here in Smyrna, Georgia, this is A Bunch of Malarkey. I'm your host, Charlie McMahon. Thank you so much for joining us once again. This is our 10th episode. Can you believe it? You've been tuning in since August. 10 episodes, so we're hitting a bit of a milestone here today, and we owe it all to you for listening every week, interacting on social media, and telling your friends and family. And we're closing in on about 2,000 downloads now, so we've been listened to about 2,000 times, and they're all unique downloads, so we're averaging a little over 200 listeners per episode, and that's a great little start to our show, so we really appreciate all of your loyalty to the show and for spreading the word. And we've been getting some emails, which we're going to read later. If you'd like to email us, it's a bunch of malarkey podshow at gmail.com. A bunch of malarkey podshow at gmail.com. So we are coming off another weekend, a 3-day weekend for some, if you work for, I guess, the government or schools or banks. It was Columbus Day yesterday. Now, I know there's a lot of controversy going around about Columbus Day. People don't want to honor Columbus anymore because he was a slave trader, slave owner, and killed people. And folks, that's basically U.S. history. Name somebody from those times who was a founding father, an explorer that didn't do all that type of crap. So, you know, I'm not going to get political on the show, but we're going to two extremes here. The extreme right doesn't want to think anything's off limits. You can say anything about anybody, honor everybody, say racial things, all kinds of stuff. The extreme left, you can't celebrate Columbus Day. There was even a story from Saturday night's Yankees broadcast. They're in the playoffs against the Red Sox. And Ron Darling, who is a very good pitcher for the New York Mets and a great announcer. He does Mets games and he does games for TBS. And the Yankees pitcher, Tanaka, was on the mound. And he gave up a home run, and he simply said, oh, that's been the chink in his armor all year. He's been good. Otherwise, the home run ball is what's killing him. He had to go on and apologize after the game for saying the word chink in the armor because Tanaka is Asian. But come on, people. What are we doing? What are we doing? This is what I mean. This is why, as I get older, I'm going more towards the middle because I can't stand extremes. I can't stand the right that says you could say anything about everybody, as offensive as it is, too bad, get over it. Then you got the left that you can't say anything. Folks, it's Columbus Day. And, you know, here's my feeling about Columbus Day.
He discovered America is what he did. He was a brave Italian explorer. And in this house, Christopher Columbus is a hero. End of story.
And that was the infamous Tony Soprano, played by James Gandolfini on The Sopranos. And that's basically how it was in my house. You can make fun of anybody, but when you make fun of an Italian, you know, my last name, McMahon, I'm Irish and Italian. And now with this new DNA thing, I found out what percentage I really am. But let me tell you something, folks. You've heard my stories a little bit. I've scratched the surface about my mom and about my family. I could come home like in the Flasher story. Ma, there was a Flasher in the woods. He showed his privates. Oh, you want more macaroni? Like, just blew it off. I need glasses. You know, school nurse said I need glasses. They're full of shit. They're in cahoots with the eyeglass. You can come home and say anything. I came home one time, I don't know if this was elementary or middle school, and told her that my teacher said that Christopher Columbus didn't discover America, that the Vikings saw it first, and he gets the credit for it. She actually called the school and went off on a rant on this teacher. I must have been middle school because I think it was a history teacher, and totally tore this poor guy apart because he knocked an Italian. Whether it was true or not what he said, it didn't matter. But that's how it was in my house. You couldn't make fun of Italians or put an Italian down because you would have to deal with my mom's wrath. So I'm sure she's not too happy about this whole anti-Columbus thing going on in the country right now either. So moving on from Columbus Day. Otherwise, it was a pretty uneventful weekend. Hot as heck here again in the Atlanta metro area. I think this is our 6th day in a row, 90 degrees. Mother Nature, you're a mutant. Yeah, you want to talk about mutants before we get into the mutant segment. Mother Nature, you're a mutant. It's almost mid-October. We're still in the 90s here. We actually had our HVAC unit for our main floor crap out on us on Saturday, and we have to have a new one installed here in October because the thing's been running nonstop since the end of February, beginning of March. The thing just said, I can't take it anymore. So it's like, come on now. We want bonfires. We want hoodies. We want s'mores. We want to have some fun. We want the leaves to fall. You had your time, summer. It's over. Give the other seasons a chance. Come on. It's almost Halloween. So I referenced the mutants. We have this new segment for the last 2 weeks called the Mutant of the Week. And it's actually been very popular. I've been getting emails, and you guys have been voting on the Facebook page. But I'll tell you, I think I've been trying to match up the nominees pretty evenly. But there have been 2 landslide winners the last 2 weeks. So this past week, we had a woman who stored her mom's body. Her mom, 93 years old, died, and she decided to hold on to the body to explore the stages of death, and she ended up getting in all kinds of trouble for it. So she actually won in a landslide this week, and I thought we had it pretty evenly matched, so I don't know. I'm going to have to try and get more like contenders together because it's been... she won 89-11 last week over the lady who showed her teeth to the naked man on the porch and made him run off. She pulled out her denture. So last week's winner is the woman storing her mom's body in her house for 3 months. All right, so let's get to this week's. I really tried, because of 2 landslides, to match these up a little bit better. So this week's nominees, the first one, I'm going to read this right out of the news for you folks. It was a dry, windy spring day. I don't know why it says spring, because this just happened. Anyway. Oh, no, here we go. And Dickie had planned an exciting gender reveal party in the Colorado National Forest near Green Valley, Arizona. For the big moment, the father-to-be filled a target with powder that would burst either pink or blue. He also added a tannerite, a highly explosive but perfectly legal substance, officials said. And when he fired his rifle, the blast sent sparks into the state's dry brush and started the sawmill fire. Alarmed, he immediately, but unsuccessfully, tried to put out the fast-moving flames and then alerted authorities, Forest Service Special Agent Brent Robinson said in court documents. Oh, I see. This is because he's in court now. Dickie immediately reported the fire to law enforcement, cooperated, and admitted that he started the fire. Why did I just get that Billy Joel, "We Didn't Start the Fire" song in my head? Anyway, Robinson said in a court filing last month, noting that the entire incident was caught on film by a witness. Fueled by 40-mile-an-hour winds and bone-dry conditions, the flames raced across state-owned land over the Santa Rita Mountains and scorched thousands of acres belonging to the Forest Service and Bureau of Land Management. Ultimately, the sawmill fire burned for 2 weeks, and though no buildings were destroyed, the blaze drove dozens of people from their homes and caused over $8 million in damages. In his plea, Dickie agreed to pay $220,000 in restitution, handing over $100,000 when he is sentenced on October 9th, and then the rest in $500 installments, basically till he drops dead. Dickie was also sentenced to 5 years of probation and agreed to take part in a public service announcement for the Forest Service. His attorney told the Arizona Daily Star that the 37-year-old will borrow from his retirement fund to help pay the reparations. It was a complete accident, Dickie said. I feel absolutely horrible about it. It was probably one of the worst days of my life. I'd like to know what kind of life this guy's living, that was only one of the worst days. He burnt down a whole forest, but it was only one of the worst. One of the worst. So this must have been some kind of fire, folks.
That's the fire!
That was quite a fire. But let me back up for a minute. I could do a whole show on this. And actually, this was going to be one of the topics on the show a couple of weeks ago with a co-host who bailed on me, but we hope to have her on another time. We were going to talk about these gender reveal parties and how ridiculous they are. I understand, folks. Now I'm going to get attacked by the people with kids. Well, you don't have to. Listen, I know it's a proud moment you're having a kid. You want to tell everybody if it's going to be a boy or girl. What happened to coming home from the doctor's office after you find out and gathering some family and friends and making a little celebration, pop some champagne? It started with these cakes where you cut and the frosting in the middle. The baker got a note and you didn't know what was in it. You cut it, it's pink or blue. Okay, I could deal with that. Now we got people shooting things, starting fires, exhaust coming out of tailpipes, people throwing baseballs filled with blue or pink powder, and half the time they're missing it and it's hitting the ground and exploding. One hit the grandfather in the face and it caused a big ruckus there. We got to stop with these gender reveals. I don't think it's even so much as that you're proud of what you're having. It's for show. Everything's on social media now. There's nothing sacred anymore. We have to tell everybody everything. I mean, I saw some people from my high school class talking about the 30th reunion coming up. Now, I wouldn't travel from Atlanta to New York for it unless there was no social media. If I hadn't seen or talked to anybody in 30 years, I'd be on the first plane wanting to see everybody. But folks, I know what you had for dinner last night. I know all your kids' names. I know everything about you. Why would I fly 900 miles when I talk to you every day? Or I see, if we're not ones that talk every day on social media, you see what I'm doing every day. I'm seeing what you're doing every day. Why do they even bother with these reunions anymore? You know everything about everybody. I could tell you what 10 people I went to high school with had for dinner last night. So everything's on social media now. And these reveals have gotten so out of hand. Everything's got to be over the top just to show off to other people. I don't know, folks. Call me a cynic, a negative person, whatever, but it's gotten out of hand. And my future co-host, we're going to have a whole show on this, so I don't want to get into too much detail. So that's our first mutant. During a gender reveal with some crazy firing of a gun and explosives, he basically set a forest fire. The next one is about a man aboard a New Jersey transit train from Rahway, New Jersey, over to Long Branch. He went to town. A man aboard a New Jersey train from Rahway to Long Branch went to town, sloughing off the calluses on the bottom of his feet with a Dremel, which is a power tool, and the woman next to him caught it all on video. You got to go on YouTube or on the news sites and see this, folks. Candy Wolf captured the stomach-churning scene on Wednesday afternoon with her cell phone while sitting just feet away from the public pedicurist. I still don't know how he decided it was okay on the train, she told NewJersey.com. I guess the callus was really bothering him. The man can be seen on the video using a Dremel power tool to sand off the calluses on his feet. Nobody on the train told him to stop. She thought to herself, should I take a picture? I don't want to humiliate the guy. But then she eventually decided to. The sickening incident went down on a southbound New Jersey coastline train, which was traveling between Rahway and Long Branch. Okay, folks, now you're on this train and you see some guy. You're not going to say something with callus shrapnel flying all over you? I'd be like, dude, hey, buddy.
Yeah?
You want to stop that?
Stop what?
Taking your calluses off.
No, I really need to, man. I don't have money for a podiatrist.
You need to stop that shit now before I come up there and kick your ass. I mean, seriously. Who's not going to say something to a guy throwing calluses all over the train? People just sit there now and film it and not say anything. I would have been all over this. I snapped at a guy buying donuts one morning because he was naming every donut and who it was for. You think I'm not going to yell at somebody rubbing calluses off their feet with a power tool? Come on, folks. Say something. Say something. Everybody's afraid. They want to film it, but everybody doesn't have the balls to say something. Come on. So those are our mutants of the week. The man on the train rubbing calluses off the bottom of his feet with a Dremel power tool, and the guy during a gender reveal blowing up a national forest and burning How many acres? 8,000 acres? Crazy. Crazy, folks. Crazy, crazy, crazy stuff. So speaking of crazy stuff, I know I did a little tease there in the video preview about some juicy details that went down in my high school. I got two separate stories, that the first of which my best friends and even my family members other than my dad doesn't know. So I'm going to come out 30 years later and tell you what went down. And the second story, which is also kind of juicy and, scandalous, I guess. A couple of my friends know, I think, but we're going to tell those stories right now. So it all starts, people ask me, a lot of the emails I get, they ask me, I might as well get this out of the way because it leads in. How do you come up with a topic for the show? And I tell them, I responded this week, and I said that usually I will see something throughout the course of the week. Like after I tape this show, I won't have another show until next Tuesday, but in the interim, I will see something or something will jog my memory of a story, which will set the tone for the podcast. And I have so many stories. I'm telling you, folks, all this drama and shit has followed me around. It's all started with the crazy family, which I haven't even scratched the surface on yet. But I wouldn't even put a number on the amount of stories because all this shit follows me around. So this week's story came to me. I was driving around home from the store from the other day, and my neighborhood has this fantasy football league for the guys, and they do this computerized fantasy football, and it's like a small pool. I don't know how much they put in and what the weekly winner gets, but the loser gets this sign put on his lawn that says the name of our subdivision, and it says weekly fantasy loser to humiliate the guy. And it's for small potatoes, and it's just a fun, I guess, fantasy league. And it got me thinking about my teenage years and gambling, and I was basically a bookie. Okay, let me tell you how it started. My dad, as you know, I spoke about this Pathmark store that my parents worked at. All the shady characters that would come in and people my parents would hire through that Pathmark social network. So in around 1985, I guess it started, my dad started bringing these betting sheets for college and pro football on the same sheet. There was this long, skinny form that you would fill out. There was a number next to each team where you would circle the team you wanted to win with a point spread, and then you could pick the over-under for the game. So there was a plethora of Saturday college games, and then it was all the Sunday games. And what you would do is you would figure out how many picks you want. The odds for each, the odds were on the back. Like if you had 4 picks out of 4, the odds were 11-1 that you would win. So if you bet $5, you would win 55, and so on and so on. I'm not going to get into all that. So this was back in 85. I was 14. I maybe had a paper out. So my dad was bringing these football sheets home. And on the bottom of that sheet was a stub you would either tear or cut off. And you'd put your name, the amount of picks you had, the amount you were betting, and then you would the numbers. It was like a grid with all the numbers pertaining to the teams you picked on top. It was like a stub that you would hand in. So my dad would bring these home. And my dad would bet like $10. My dad wasn't a gambler. Neither was I. I had a paper out. My dad, for fun, used to say, let's pick some teams. And I used to pick some teams and, throw $5 or $10 down. And I won a couple of times, so it was fun. So my dad used to get these football sheets on Tuesdays, and then we would have to hand them in. I'd have to give it to him on Fridays before he went into work because they were due in on Saturday before the college game started around noon. So a couple of years went by, and it was the same thing, just friendly bets. And I think I got a couple of my friends from school in on it. My dad would get sheets for them. And it was a fun little thing. It made the games, like the Cincinnati-Cleveland game, interesting, because why the hell else would you watch a game that wasn't your team on TV? It just made Sundays fun. So now fast forward a couple of years, I think it was 1987. The guy there was different levels of this gambling ring. We don't know who the people who ran it were. We think they were connected people or something. My dad never asked. It was not something we ever asked. But he had a point of contact in every one of these big hubs, like my dad's store in Pathmark. So what would happen is there would be one guy that would distribute all the football sheets and collect all the money, and whatever he collected, he got 25% of, and he would hand in 75% of the money with all the stubs. So the guy who was doing that for years, I don't know if he retired or quit, So this shady connected guy went up to my dad because he was with the store a long time and they knew he was trustworthy and said, Jim, is this something you would want to do for me? Hand out the football sheets. I'll come in every Tuesday. You hand them out. Collect all the money by Friday, early Saturday morning. And by Saturday at noon, I'll come and get all the money. You get your 25% cut. And we'll do this every week. And my dad said, yeah, it's a little extra money in his pocket. So it started out small where my dad was just collecting like $600, $700. And my dad would put a couple hundred in his pocket every week. Sometimes you get $800, $900. So I was still in high school. This was the beginning of my junior year when my dad took this over. And I said to my dad, I can probably help you with this. And my dad says, what do you mean? I said, well, I have friends in school and my job at Herman's Sporting Goods at the mall. I said, my boss would probably be into it. I could probably get all the people at my job doing this. And my dad says, okay, why don't we do this? You do what you have to do. And then we'll get all the money together on Friday night. And then I'll give you some of the money. And, because at that point, folks, I was working at a sporting goods store. I was making $3.65 an hour. I think minimum wage was $3.35. I had bought a new car in high school, so this was about a year later I bought the car, but I was saving up for a car, and $3.65 didn't go very far. So to have an extra 50 or 60, 70 bucks in my pocket every week was a big deal when you're 16 years old, a junior in school. So I started off very slowly hustling at my job, a couple of my friends. By my senior year in high school now this all happened, what I'm going to tell you happened by accident. First week of the 88-89 football season, I brought a bunch of these football sheets into school. It was tucked in one of those, I don't know if you remember those bendable binders that you'd have one for each subject with the loose leaf paper inside. I had a bunch of them in there, and there was this one, I'm not going to name the teacher. I know it's 30 years later. He's probably retired for 20 years, but there was this one social studies teacher I would chat with after class. We liked sports. We would shoot the breeze. And one day I was talking with him after class, and I went to leave, and all these football sheets fell out of my binder. So I'm like, I must have turned 10 shades of red thinking, holy shit, I'm going to get in trouble because I shouldn't have this bedding material in school. So he looked at it. He helped me pick them up. And he goes, hey, what's this? And I said, they're something my dad runs, and I try to help him out. He's like, looking at it. He's like, I could get a lot of the teachers here to get in on this. He said, we've been looking for something like this. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, how many sheets do you need a week? So he says, could you get me like 50? So I said, yeah. I said, take what I have here. I'll get more from my dad. So I give him these sheets, and I guess he was giving them out in the faculty room, and each week this take got bigger and bigger, to the point where I would have to see him after class, and he'd hand me an envelope full of money and these stubs on Friday because the money was due in on Saturday at noon. So he would hand me an envelope every Friday after class. Now, folks, you do this today, forget it, it's a scandal. And I didn't tell any of my friends or my siblings because I liked all the extra money that was coming in. I wasn't going to be an idiot and say something and say it to the wrong person and get this teacher in trouble and get the other teachers in trouble. So I just went with this every week. And every week this envelope was getting bigger. I was bringing in more football sheets. And it got to the point where some teachers were forgetting to give this one teacher the money. And I would be walking down the halls and I would hear my name called, and I would have to duck into a classroom to grab a $20 bill and a stub from this teacher. And it wasn't just male teachers, folks, female teachers, people above the teaching level on different levels of the school. I was walking around with envelopes full of money in my high school because I had basically the faculty of the school I went to in on this betting scheme. But then it didn't stop there. The money at my job at Herman's got bigger. I had other stores people from other Herman stores dropping money off on Fridays at the store. It got to a point where I couldn't work Friday nights anymore because that was my collection day at the school, at work. I would have to stop at the job and pick up the money. And then it got to a point where there was this one pizzeria in my town. We were going there for years. Every Friday night we got pizza. And I told the owner was the guy who made the pizzas, and his dad worked there, and a couple other guys and a few guys in the back. And this guy had some money and he wanted in on it. So every Friday night when I went to pick up our dinner, for our pizza, there would be an envelope full of money and stubs taped. There would be 2 pizzas, and then my dad would get like an entree, like baked ziti or something. And on the top pizza, on the bottom of the box, would be an envelope full of money taped to the bottom of the pizza box, wedged in between the two boxes. So I would know that he would give me a nod, so I knew the money was there. And then he got the deli next door to the pizzeria involved. This became, my dad started out, it was like $800 a week. His cut was $200. We got to a point, folks, and this is not an exaggeration, where we were bringing in $5,000 to $6,000 a week and putting $1,500 in our pocket, and my dad and I would split it. So here you had a kid in high school, and I was able to get a new car because, the car payment was only like $270 a month. But when you're making $365 an hour and you have insurance on a 17-year-old, that's how I paid for my car basically every week, and school clothes and things like that. So my job at the sporting goods store was just like, a necessary evil for when football season was over. But during football season, this is what I was doing. I was running money around, and it was just a riot. It was just a riot because you'd be walking down the hallway and you would hear, "Charlie!" And you'd turn and you'd see a teacher wink at you or nod, and that was I come into the classroom. And I would go in there and take, if he didn't have a chance to catch up with the other teacher and give him his money, I would get that on Fridays from several different places. And the funny part is on Friday nights, my dad and I would have all the money spread out on the kitchen table, making sure everything matched to the stubs, taking our cut out. But then we would hear like friends of mine coming in the middle of the night. We'd hear cars pulling up all night, putting money in the mailbox. My dad would have to check the mailbox on Saturday morning before heading out to work to make the drop. This guy would come in and collect all the money. And this guy gave my dad a Christmas bonus because of all the money we were bringing in for him. But it gets funnier. So we did this for about, I would say 2 or 3 more years. And I guess you're wondering, why did this end? And it's a shame it did. One Saturday, I should say, I think it was 91 or 92. So this went on a few more years. My dad had the money as usual. Now, I didn't have the high school anymore because I graduated. So it was just my job at the time and things like that. But we were still doing okay. So one particular week, I think we collected about $5,000. So my dad took his cut out and gave me my part of it. And he went to work, and he expected the guy to come and get the money at noon on Saturday. Like, the guy never showed up. So now my dad has $500, whatever it was that week in his pocket. He's like, oh, shit, what do I do? So word got to him that they all got arrested. The whole ring got busted by the police. And my dad now had all this money. So my dad comes home Saturday night, and he says to me, they all got arrested. The football ring is over. After years of doing this, guys finally got pinched. So my dad says, what should we do? I said, well, we have 2 choices. We can give everybody their money back and tell them these guys got in trouble, or we can run it ourselves. So my dad looks at me and goes, what do you mean run it ourselves? I go, we run it ourselves. We lay out the football sheets. We watch all the scores. We'll follow all the games. And if a few people win, we obviously pay them out. And then we keep the rest. And my dad says, what if 1 million people hit and we can't cover the bets? I said, well, that's when we tell them the guy got pinched and we give everybody their money back. My dad's like, I don't know, man. I don't think that's a good idea. I said, trust me. Let's run it. So if Sunday comes, and we're doing all right. We're doing great. Everybody's losing early. The 4 o'clock games come on. Now, I believe it was a Jets-Miami game. I think Miami was favored by a touchdown. And they were up by, I want to say about 10 points. And the Jets were driving. And had the Jets scored, we would have been in big trouble. Because a lot of people had the Jets, and we would have been in big trouble. But somehow the Jets turned over the ball, as usual. Sorry, Jets fans. Miami pounced on it, and we ended up paying only a few people, a couple $100, and me and my dad pocketed over $5,000, and that ended. But unfortunately, that was the grand finale because we never got to do it again. But could you imagine that, folks? I'm 16, 17 years old. I look back at it now. You can't get away with stuff like that anymore because you tell one person, it's on Facebook, everybody starts talking about it. People are taking pictures of the football sheets and putting it on. You can't get away with shit anymore. I had a vow of silence. I promised this teacher, I said, I'll never say anything because I stand to lose on this. And we had a trust. Never opened my mouth. The only one that knew was my dad. And he was nervous even because at the bottom, like I told you earlier, you had to put your name. And he goes, well, what if you get caught with this money and these sheets and these stubs, and our names were on it. I said, here's what you do. And I learned this from my boss at Herman Sporting Goods. I told everybody had a fake name, like a celebrity name, Jack Nicholson, Robert De Niro. I said, pick a celebrity name you guys all come up with a different one. Put that in the line, and then put your initials underneath that or next to it. This way, if you win, I know where it comes from, who to go to. So everybody was putting like the commissioner of football, Reggie Jackson, all these fake celebrity and sports figures names. So if we did get caught, or like the ring got caught up, now if the police grabbed all these stubs and saw people's names on it, they could investigate and you can get in trouble. So we had a system where we would put fake names. The teachers were putting fake names. People at work were putting fake names. And then we were putting initials next to it, and everybody was safe. So I thought it was pretty funny. It was just weird being a 17-year-old kid, getting pulled into classrooms and giving envelopes of money every week, going to delis and pizzerias with envelopes taped to boxes, going to work, coming home with envelopes full of money. But hey, it was a hustle, and it was well worth it. So that's my big scandal about my one of them anyway. I got another one for you, but that was my scandal about my high school and the big gambling ring that was going on with the teaching staff and higher when I was back in high school. It was actually pretty exciting and fun. But an even bigger scandal in high school, folks, and this is another true story, and I have a couple of friends who know this. Back to that sporting goods job. I worked in the sneaker department, and I had a boss who I stayed friends with until he passed away about 10 years ago, suddenly. I still miss him very much. We did a lot of stuff together after I stopped working there and went to his wedding. We were very close for years. A lot of the memories I have in my life were he was involved in, so I still can't believe he's passed. But he was my boss, and he told me, he was a store manager, and he told me, Charlie, I don't get paid. I don't get my bonus. My bonus here at the store isn't based on profit of the store. It's based on net sales. So when people come in, if it's a $70 pair of sneakers and they're like, oh, it's too expensive, he says, be like a used salesman. Say, what can I do to put you in those sneakers today? Not that corny, but something like that. And we had this form known as a spot markdown, where I could put a reason for the markdown, take off whatever I needed to take off. Within reason, you're not going to give it a $70 pair of sneakers for $40. You're going to take $10, $15 off. The manager would sign it. They would bring it up to the register and get the discount. And I also had a 20% off employee discount. Now, I don't know how one of the teachers, well, actually I do. There was a teacher, I'm not going to name, again, who the teacher was, but he had like a weird, like surfer kind of accent. And me and my good friend, John, used to like imitate him all the time. And I was in his class, and I got to talking to him one day about Herman's Sporting Goods. So he told me he had 2 or 3 kids and a wife, and they took a lot of ski vacations, and they all needed new skis and jackets, and we're talking thousands of dollars, folks. Skis and bindings and boots and Gore-Tex jacket, from soup to nuts with these ski packages. So I said to him, why don't you come in and I can get you a 20% discount? Oh, that would be great. But me and my friend used to make fun of his accent. I didn't think he would ever come in. One Saturday I'm working, and they announce on the speaker, Charlie, pick up on line 1, Charlie, line 1. And I go, hello, this is Charlie, may I help you? And this voice on the other end says, Charlie, I'm coming in for the skis today. This is so-and-so. And I thought it was my friend John fucking with me. I go, come on, John, stop fucking with me. He goes, no, Charlie, this really is so-and-so. And I said it again, come on, I don't have time for this, I'm busy. And then finally the guy said, you told me the other day in the class I could come in. Then I knew that it was him. I said, yeah, come on in. So he comes in with his wife and kids, and I saved this guy hundreds, if not $1,000 on, I'm telling you, soup to nuts for his whole family. Jackets, ski pants, skis, bindings, poles, helmets, goggles, everything. Gloves, they bought everything. And he slipped me a $50 bill on the way out, and he thanked me, and I really appreciated it. So he must have went into school, and they probably already knew that I was doing this gambling thing and that I could be trusted. So next thing you know, I've got teachers calling me on the telephone at work or pulling me into their office into their classroom at school asking me about the discount. Now, like I said, my boss said it's fine. Let's make the sale. He gets his bonus. Everybody's happy. I had teachers coming in on a rotating basis for everything. tennis rackets, camping equipment, sneakers for their whole family, clothing, treadmills, sporting goods. I mean, it was like a revolving door of teachers. So I'm like, and some of them would give me a tip. If they saved a lot of money, they would slip me some money. They would come over to my department. But a lot of them, I felt, and I didn't expect anything back. It wasn't like a bribe, like I'm doing this for you. But there were a couple of times where I needed a favor back. And a few of these teachers were I was in their classes. So towards the end of the year, my senior year, now I was never one to cut class. My grades were pretty good, B-plus student, high 80s. So I didn't really need to, and you weren't going to bribe a teacher for grades based on saving them a couple $100 at Herman's anyway. So I would never do that. But there were certain times towards the end of the year, it was beach weather, our high school was right near the beach, I didn't feel like going to class. So it was basically understood, without me saying anything, where I maybe cut 4 or 5 times towards the end of the year. Never got a cut. There was this thing called a cut slip where if you weren't in class but you were not absent that day based on your attendance taken in homeroom, you would get a cut slip and you would get detention. And not one cut slip in the 4 or 5 times in all those classes that I did. I never got a cut slip, never got detention, never got in trouble. There was one time even my friend got into a fight. I'm not going to name the friend or who he fought with, but had a fight in the cafeteria. They both got dragged down to the office and saw a certain authority figure down there. And I went down and followed as they were being dragged down there. I went down to this office, and the person who was making the decision on what the punishment was, as these two were in his office, I went up to his secretary and said, "Can I speak to Mr. So-and-so? He's in with a couple of students right now." I said, "Tell him it's Charlie, and I really need to speak to him." So she buzzes in on the phone. He comes out looking really pissed off. I pull him aside and I said, "Listen, I've gotten you the discount a lot. You know I could be trusted. So-and-so in there, my friend, you got to let him go. You can't give him detention. You can't suspend him." I shit you not, folks. 2 minutes later, my friend's walking out. The other kid's getting detention or suspended, whatever the fuck he got. So I basically had a hold on some of these teachers, and I could be trusted. They knew I wasn't, based on the football money, that I wasn't going to rat out. And they knew I was saving them all hundreds and thousands of dollars on all the sporting equipment. So I had a little bit of leverage, and I never abused it. I used it when I needed it, like to help my friend out, or if I wanted to take a little extended lunch and didn't want to go back to class for the rest of the day. I cashed in at the end of the year, and I never got in trouble for it. So it's good to do favors for the right people. So those are my 2 high school kind of scandal stories, if you will. Not that big of a deal, but like I said, today, this would be a big deal. It would never happen today because no teacher would probably want to take a chance in a gambling ring run by a student or taking any type of monetary value from a student as far as a discount or anything, because people can't keep their mouth shut anymore. I'm telling you 30 years later, but I'm telling you, I never said a word. And it was an understanding, and that's how it should be with a lot of things. But unfortunately, like gender reveals and everything else we spoke about, people have to run up to social media and put it on there. And certain things are just should be kept quiet. Except for certain things, like when you write a book, and that's what I'm going to talk about real quick. I know you're probably sick of it, but the official launch is coming up this Saturday the 13th. And we've had a bunch of orders already on Amazon for the paperback and the ebook, and I thank you so much for those who have bought it. I know I have at least 24 people that are holding out until after Saturday so they can get a signed copy, and I'll be setting up the channel to do that. I'll be making that announcement on the day of the launch, which will be next Saturday, the 13th. I've gotten some great reviews already on Amazon, folks, so check it out. It's called A Whole Lot of Shenanigans. It's about my 2+ years working at a courthouse parking lot on a town square here in suburban Atlanta. The crazy people, the crazy stories in here you won't believe. So check that out if you haven't done so already. And I will be doing, I don't know whether it's going to be on my page or or if you haven't liked the page yet, folks, A Whole Lot of Shenanigans has a Facebook page. So stop by there, like the page. I will be doing a Facebook Live from the launch party because we're going to be doing an interview and presentation about the book. So I'm not sure if it's going to be on my personal email or on the Whole Lot of Shenanigans page. I'll make that announcement later in the week. But for those of you not in the Atlanta area that want to take part in the launch party, I will be at least broadcasting the the interview and the presentation that we're going to have about the book. So thank you all that have bought it already. I really appreciate it. And your encouragement for the last few months as I was writing it, it really means a lot to me. And I hope you do pick up the book, whether it be on ebook or on paperback. And for those waiting still, and like I said, I've had about 20 to 24 people already ask how they can get an autographed copy and a personalized copy. And I'm going to make that available to you guys as of next weekend. So thank you for hanging in there for that and taking such an interest in the project. But I really do think you will laugh at the book. And it's a quick read. I think you can get through it in about, 3 hours, 2-3 hours. So it's a quick read, all individual standalone stories. And I think you'll laugh. And buy some copies. Christmas is coming. It's a nice little stocking stuffer, a great little Secret Santa or grab bag gift. So if you go to Amazon, get an extra copy. I certainly don't mind since Amazon's taking most of the money anyway. But that is going to wrap this week's show up. Our listenership up again. Another new all-time high last week. So thank you so much for coming in, tuning in every week, whether it be on your drive home, drive to work, at the gym, on the toilet, wherever you're listening. I appreciate it. Tell some friends, tell some family. I still want to grow the audience. So, and I think the biggest question before I go, I got, and I really want to answer it. Someone asked me if I got paid to do the podcast. Now, podcasts, you really don't get paid until you grow a big enough audience to get some sponsors. And we're not at that point yet. We're in the infancy stage. Sometimes it takes a year or two for a podcast to monetize. So not even near that. And I've been asked if I got paid for it. I told you earlier. They asked if I have. Asked if I had a script. Now I don't have a script every week. I'm not. The only thing I read from you, read off of, are the mutant stories straight from the news, and if I read an excerpt from my book. Otherwise, how I do it, I make an outline of what I want to speak about with some bullet points, and I try to keep the show on the rails that way. I don't have any script, and a few people that wanted to co-host with me where it fell through asked the same thing. Is there a script? What do I do? No, this is the topic. Come up with a few stories that relate, in your life to this topic, and we'll just talk about them on the air like Johnny B does. He did a couple of times, and so that answers that question. If we have a script, if I get paid, and I also was asked, why do I do it? If I'm not getting paid, why do you do the podcast? It's not about getting famous or, how long something like this would take to ever get famous. Well, one, it's a sounding board for me. Other than just writing like I wrote my book, it's a way for me to get some frustrations out. But most of all, I love storytelling. I love making people laugh. So if you're listening and you laugh a few times during the show, I feel like I did my job. Because I know what it was like to be in a job every day where I depended on, I didn't have coworkers. I worked at that parking lot alone. And even in other scenarios where you had coworkers, where you just needed a different voice to make you laugh, whether it be a DJ on the radio, whether you listen to Howard Stern, whether you listen to something else, a podcast, a radio program. What a difference that can make in someone's day. And that's why I do it. It's fun for me. I hope it's fun for you. And I hope it's a way to escape from politics and all the bullshit that's out there that's dividing us each day. Hopefully something like this, humor and music and things like that, unite us. So I hope that this takes you away from all the politics talk and the division out there. And as you're driving in your car or wherever you're listening to this, it's making you laugh. It's making you smile. We're saying that Charlie McMahon, he's a real asshole, but, sometimes he's funny. Whatever you say about me, it's fine. As long as you're listening, it's all good. So thank you so much for everything, folks. And this is going to wrap up episode number 10. My plan is to go right until the beginning of December with this first season. Then take a little bit of a break for the holidays because I know you're all going to be busy doing stuff in December. So probably take 3 or 4 weeks off in December and then start a new season, maybe with some fresher ideas come January, maybe more co-hosts. I've been really trying to get co-hosts. I've had 2 or 3 back out at the last minute for different reasons. I really want to get a female co-host on, which I've been trying to do, and all 3 of those co-hosts that bailed were female. But I want to get a female's perspective on the show We're doing the video previews. I'm trying new things to make it fresh. I don't want to have the same thing every week. So I'm hoping to have some fresher ideas, some different voices here come the new year. But I will sprinkle in some guest hosts between now and the holidays. But my plan is to go right through till beginning of December and then wrap season 1 up and start fresh in the new year, so you guys can concentrate on your families and Christmas, and you're not going to have time to be podcasting, listening, I don't think. Well, that's going to wrap it up. Thank you so much once again. I appreciate it. Tell your friends, tell your family. If you have any mutant stories, email me, abunchofmalarkeypodshow@gmail.com. Like us on Facebook, Twitter, and if you listen every week, make sure you're subscribing, whether it's on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play. Hit the subscribe button. That's how we get moved up and more noticed on these sites. As far as I know, we're coming to iHeartRadio in a few days, so that'll be another way to listen to us. But please subscribe if you're a listener. Tell your friends. I mean, I can advertise all I want, folks, but it's your voice out there telling your friends, oh, this crazy guy comes on this podcast. You got to listen. That's how my audience grows every week, so I really appreciate that. And like I always say each week, beware. It's a shit show out there. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been a bunch of malarkey.